You're editing this out, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So go ahead and start with your name and pronouns.
My name's Melissa. My pronouns are they, them, theirs.
Okay. What are some identities that you have?
I identify as queer and gender nonconforming.
What does gender mean to you?
Gender is a very complex thing that I think people process within their heads and their hearts, and it's something that relates to your body and what you're born with, and as you grow, what you decide is most comfortable and right for you.
How do you think society views gender?
So most of society is cisgender, and because of that, I don't think that a lot of people think about this. I think a lot of people are blinded by their privilege and that they're born into a body that matches their assigned sex at birth in terms of gender. And because of that, they're not really thinking about what gender might mean and how they express that, because it just happens naturally. In the same way that when I walk up a flight of stairs, I might not think about how someone who is unable to walk upstairs, maybe is on crutches or in a wheelchair, is unable to do that. An example is when cisgender people, if someone were to move into a house, a cisgender person, the house being their body, would be exactly how they wanted it to be. All of the furniture is laid out how they want it, the colors are right, the exterior is whatever they want it to look like, where someone who is not cisgender, someone who is gender nonconforming or transgender, walking into that house, things are a mess, possibly the furniture is maybe on the ceiling, there's just a lot going on. It's different levels of chaos or organization, but
Not very comfortable.
not comfortable for a lot of people. So
what do you think educators should know about gender?
Gender is so important for cisgender and transgender people, and especially for kids growing up. It's something that usually isn't talked about, but if it could be brought into classrooms, it would really benefit people in learning who they are and how to express themselves, and just talking about gender diverse people in classrooms lets students know that that they're welcome there, and when you feel safe in a space, you're more likely to feel comfortable and learn and do better in school. And it's just there's a lot of ways to do that, but it can be done. I think it should be.
I agree. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. Go ahead and start with your name and pronouns.
My name is Casey, and my pronouns are he, him, and they, them.
Okay. What identities do you
I identify as a trans man or transmasculine non-binary, if people know about non-binary things, and I identify as queer or bisexual.
What does gender mean to you?
Gender to me is very personal. Like, I know that everyone has a different definition of gender because everyone's different.
Yeah.
But for me, gender is more about your internal feelings, even if the outside doesn't relay that to the public.
How do you think society views gender?
Society views gender still in a very binary male-female sort of way, and it's also more masculinely oriented. Like, it is easier for people who identify as female to wear pants in contrast to people who identify as men wearing skirts.
Oh, sure.
So it's easier to be a masculine girl rather than a feminine man, because masculinity is still seen as better or more acceptable.
Okay. What do you think educators should know about gender?
that it changes, and that even someone who identifies as cisgender as you do, or transgender like myself, we're not stuck in the labels that we've given ourselves, and it may change over time. And also just being aware that sometimes there are trans people and we exist, and it's not that unlikely that you'll experience a trans person in your life, whether it's in your adult life or through your students.
Thank you. Go ahead and start with your name and pronouns.
My name is Lily, and my pronouns are she, her, they, them.
What identities do you have?
I identify as a genderqueer, gay human.
What does gender mean to you?
Apart from what society has told people or what their sex that they're born with tells them, it is how you identify, how you see yourself inside.
How do you think society views gender?
As a check this or that. Just two genders with societal norms associated with both of those, with major or minor roles in each. It's very black and white to most of society.
What do you think educators should know about gender?
That it is not black and white. School systems like to set certain agendas for your typical genders, and that there's so much more outside of that, and people who acknowledge different genders, a broader spectrum, or even see gender as a broader spectrum, it's integrated into a lot of their life further than you can see.
Camera's making me so uncomfortable. My name is Madeline. I use she, her, they, them pronouns.
What identities do you have?
I identify first and foremost as queer, and I identify as a lesbian and as a gender fluid, but like women-centered person.
What does gender mean to you?
Gender to me is like space, because it's vast and unexplored. And I think that, like, for me, I visualize my gender as, like, if there's a planet, and that gender identity is, like, the women identity planet, I'm not on the planet like some people are, but I kind of, like, you know, like, the moon goes around in that, like, weird, like, what is it called? Ellipses?
Sure.
Yeah. Sure. And so, like, sometimes I spend most of my time, like, pretty close, but some days I'm, like, out here. But, like, in general, I'm always feel more closer to, like, the identity of woman. So I don't usually talk about being gender fluid just because it's not, like, a primary identity for me.
I like that.
Thank you.
How do you think society views gender?
I think that, in general, society views gender as, like there's two planets, and there's nothing else. There's just dead space, and then there's a boy planet, and you're born on that planet, and you can't travel. You gotta stay there. And then there's the girl planet, and you gotta stay there. And I think it's really restrictive because I think humans, part of the human nature is exploring. I think ever since from a young age, it's ingrained in us to go and explore things. So I think it's super natural to want to explore different parts of yourself, because it's more difficult sometimes than exploring other things, but it's more challenging, and I think society tries to make it easier for people by saying, oh, you don't have to. But some people don't have a choice because they don't feel like in their brain that doesn't say boy or it doesn't say girl. It just says person, or it says, I was born with a penis, but my brain says I'm a woman. Or, for intersex people, when people decide their gender at birth, like which one they're going to present as, it's extremely limiting. So I think society views gender in a very limited way, and a very categorized way.
What do you think educators should know about gender?
I think they should just know that you just have to be open. You don't have to go out there and know everything and explore everything. But it's, I think, an educator's job to support their students, and your job is to teach your students. And if you are not respecting a student, or you are, calling a student by the wrong name or using the wrong pronouns, you are making an environment where they cannot learn, and therefore you are not doing your job. That is my opinion. So I think you don't have to change your points of view. I don't think you need to, fundamentally change anything about yourself, but simply realizing the fact that it's not about you, it's about your students, and it's about their learning and their comfort. I mean, after all, isn't that why people want to be an educator? You want to teach people, and you have a passion for that. So how can you teach people if you don't respect them? So I think my advice would just be, even if you don't understand, try. Just show a kid, if they email you and they say, so my transcript says that this is my name, but I go by this. It's just like if somebody goes by a nickname. Just make that accommodation for them. And if you make a mistake, just move past it and apologize. And because that will mean the world to them. Because I grew up around a lot of trans kids in high school, and one of the big things for them was they didn't feel like they could go to office hours, they didn't feel like they could get help from their educators because they didn't feel respected, and they felt like if they went in there, they would be seen as somebody they're not. And so I think that's the most important.
So my name is Ray. My pronouns are she, her, they, them.
What identities do you have?
So I don't identify with any sort of gender label, and the easy way of saying that is I'm non-binary. And I also identify as a lesbian and partially woman-esque-ish, along that line, closer to.
Okay. I like it. What does gender mean to you?
To me, it's, like the kind of behaviors and aesthetics and stuff like that you're more comfortable with. Obviously, that's not how it goes for everybody, but it's diverse and it's vast, and it doesn't always line up neatly into people who identify along male spectrums or masculine, and people who identify along female spectrums or feminine, and also along sex binaries lining up with that too.
How do you think society views gender?
I think society views gender in that very binary way where masculine male people exist in one way and feminine female people exist in another way. And that's not true even for binary trans people. Or binary cis people, binary people in general. There's a broad spectrum of identities. Nobody's 100% masculine or 100% feminine. So even for just everybody fits along a spectrum, and people don't seem to realize that even, cis people or binary people fit not solely on an end, but somewhere kind of in the middle. Close to an end maybe, but not at the very end of masculine and feminine.
What do you think educators should know about gender?
I think educators need to know that gender is, a very personal thing, and that you need to be kind of conscious of how people identify themselves and what they prefer to be known as. It's easy to make an assumption about who someone is based on how they dress and whether they act more feminine or masculine, but that doesn't mean necessarily anything about, number one, how they identify, but also just who they are as a person. So I think it's really important for people and educators to learn that, you know, what you see is not the whole picture in any circumstance. You're welcome. Your computer went black. I hope that's okay. Okay, cool.